Hi everyone, my name's Ross and I'm the founder of Appear Here. So I'm already sweltering sat here. So we're going to try and keep today's session a little bit shorter so everyone can get outside and enjoy the sunshine. So first of all, welcome to tonight's underground session. Tonight we are talking about travel. So for those of you that don't know us, just very quickly, Appear Here is the leading marketplace to rent retail space. We've got offices in London, Paris and New York. I'm slightly jet lagged as I got in last night from our New York office where we were last week at one of these, which was about, what was the New York one about last week? Food. It was about food. And they were talking also a lot about travel and where the coolest food stuff was happening. But tonight's event is all about travel. Our panel of editors and designers will be exploring the rise of this industry, how retailers are adapting, and the next big destinations. And if you have any questions, just tweet them, hashtag it underground sessions and add it at Appear Here. And at the end, we'll be going through those. And if any of you want to put your hands up and interject, we'll have that chance at the end. So let's meet our panelists. First of all, over here we've got Stefan. Stefan is the founder of Horizn Studios, which has been labeled the world's smartest design luggage. Their high-quality bags infuse design, travel, and tech to meet the needs of today's tech-savvy digital nomads. And you guys have already done collaborations with Soho House, Design Hotels, and you're based in Berlin, but expanding to London.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. Yeah, we're about to open a pop-up store in August in Soho, and thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. Serena is the founder of Suitcase magazine. Started in 2012. Me and Serena are actually very close friends when we both set up our business, still are. Hasn't departed. And I remember we were literally both like sat down together, going through each other's plans of our businesses, trying to get them off the ground. So Serena is also the very first store we ever launched. But less about us and more about her. She founded Suitcase Media, which develops content for travel brands, already collaborations with Rolex and Muji, as well as the highly successful Suitcase magazine that's now sold globally. And is also founded Cook for Syria, which, Serena, maybe just on that, just quickly touch upon Cook for Syria.
Sure. So I started Cook for Syria in 2016. It's a movement about Syrian food, brings people together over Syrian culture. And we've got some of the top chefs involved and allows people to just connect with the culture when the numbers and the crisis is just so big. We've raised over £500,000 now for UNICEF and children in the region. And we've just launched our second cookbook, Bake for Syria, which has become one of the best sellers on Amazon again. So if you haven't seen it already, please go out and buy a copy and try and bake something. And if not, just Instagram it and share Bake for Syria.
And what I love about Cook for Syria, I don't know how many people in the room also saw Imad's. So Imad was a Syrian refugee. Serena introduced to me just over a year ago, and we worked at Appear Here to launch him his own restaurant. And I think he's now like in the book. Or
what book?
The new one. Is Imad
yes,
in it?
he is in the new cookbook. Sorry. Just forgot about that cookbook momentarily. And he's got his own catering business now as well, which is incredible.
Amazing. So we've got Kate over here, who's the contributing editor at Condé Nast Traveler, and who also writes for the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the Financial Times, and also the Traveler, as I mentioned, and was editor-in-chief of Jet Setter, previously part of Gilt Group. Kate, how did you get into travel? How did you get into journalism?
I started off in advertising, actually. I worked at an agency called J. Walter Thompson for a few years.
Yeah.
Didn't like that very much. And then did a postgrad in journalism at City here in London. And Condé Nast Traveler was one of my work placements. So I managed to stick around and eventually persuaded them to give me a job. So that's what happened. And then I went to Condé Nast Traveler in New York for 4 years. And from there, went to Jet Setter, which is a travel startup.
And right now exciting. It says that you're also heading up Facebook's new leadership platform, Grow. I know they just launched a new magazine.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
That's
running?
one of my many... I think I'm what the Millennials term a slashy, a multi-hyphen person. So, yeah, okay. I do a few things.
So your LinkedIn profile has, like, multiple things with, like, still
pages.
Current.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And finally, we have got Tristan. So Tristan's the editor of Amuse, which is Vice travel channel. The lifestyle site launched in 2015, repositioned this year as a luxury travel publication aimed at affluent, experience-seeking readers. Who are those?
So we're basically looking at a slightly older readership than the kind of people who'd read Vice or sort of Munchies or Broadly or that kind of thing. It's basically people who've grown up with Vice and Vice channels and are now between the ages of kind of 30 and 40, bit more disposable income, but still that millennial sensibility. So they're still looking at experiences over material possessions, and they have a bit of an eco-conscience, and they like travel.
Awesome. So first question I'm going to throw to you, Tristan. Start by, you've told us a little bit about your background, but what's the changes you've seen in the travel industry since you first got into it?
I guess from a media point of view, the huge one has been the rise of Instagram. Obviously, it's not been around for a whole. I can't remember exactly when it was founded, but it's fairly recent. I mean, YouTube was 2005. Facebook was later than that. I think Instagram is even more recent. Yeah, it's sort of 9 or 10, and that's literally flipped travel marketing on its head, and also travel media to a certain extent. So that's obviously been a massive sort of change and a huge revolution. I guess it's also changed people's tastes and the way they get inspired and how they plan their holiday and that kind of thing. So that is the number one change I think that I've seen.
And Kate, what about you? So you sort of said see and travel. You've worked at all these places. You're the what did you call it? The
Slashy.
The slashy.
Sounds a bit weird.
With all these different experiences from different places. Tell us what you think's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I embarrassingly have been in. I think I started at Condé Nast Travel in 2004, which is a very long time ago. And I was trying to remember what the website was like then, because I think there was one, but I honestly can't remember what it was like. Web was so secondary to everything we did, and that lasted a really long time. So it sounds like a very obvious thing to say, but really the internet has completely revolutionized travel and my experience of travel. After I did my A-levels, my friends and I booked a package holiday, I think via Thomas Cook. When I went on my gap year, we used The Lonely Planet.
Yeah.
The internet it's impossible to underestimate what the internet has done for travel.
I always think as well, like, what has that actually done for the traveller? Because I imagine, like, when I was thinking about, and I didn't go on, but friends are going gap years and stuff, they were, like, even now, like, I guess they had Google Maps and things like that. Like, I'm thinking, what did they do? What happened if they got lost? Like, it was probably quite a big step, whereas now it's sort of...
Yeah, in some ways it was a lot more exciting, because you literally didn't know what you were going to do the next day, and... you met people very organically and things went really badly wrong and you didn't have any contact with your folks back home apart from, proper air mail letters.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening is purely down to the internet. Why are millennials getting into experiences and stuff? Because it's just so much easier to find out about these things in some ways, and it's much easier to meet people in local areas. It's just a totally different experience, isn't it?
So, Serena, what's your take on this? We're talking about experiences changing with travellers, and this was ultimately why you founded Suitcase.
Yeah, well, I think I love Anna Wintour's quote about needing fewer things but better curated. And I feel like when I first started Suitcase in 2012, that the internet was just full of all these different travel websites that were just offering really superficial experiences. And I think that's one of the main things that's changed, is because there's so much more access to this kind of information. People are asking a little bit more about these destinations, and also the barrier to entry for travel's come down a lot. Flights are cheaper, it's easier to get around, it's easier to find out about the destination when you get there. So it's not enough just to go to the Eiffel Tower in Paris anymore. You want to go to that cool restaurant. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to start Suitcase, because I didn't feel like anyone was really catering to that new generation of travellers yet.
So your thing was less about choice and less about accessibility, and in many ways saying, how do we then edit this down to stop you from spending hours sort of looking at Lonely Planet and everywhere else, figuring out what to do?
Because even now, the average person looks at 25 different websites before booking something. And that's just not a very efficient way of doing things. No one has time to do that.
What I do now is whenever I go somewhere, I instantly type into Google, like, Suitcase magazine, Lisbon, what to do, and it comes up with a list. Or if you want to look really cool, if someone's like asking you, like, hey, do you have any great recommendations in like Brooklyn right now? I like do the same thing. Go, yeah, here's 4, and copy and paste. So you are my trusted friend to give that advice to. And Stefan, what you've done is you've looked at what's going on and you've created a physical product that's been around forever. Why are you making luggage interesting and relevant?
Why is a good question. Well, I think
why and how.
Why and how. We launched Horizn Studios in 2015, about 3 years ago. Kind of out of our own experience, we were traveling a lot. I was traveling all my life quite a bit, and I was just, interesting. I found it very interesting what you said. For me, it's the same when I look at how things have changed, how travel has changed today. I just remembered first time I went to Bali. It was about 20 years ago. Not really using the internet or anything. It was super explorative. It was a lot of things were imperfect, and we had no idea what we were doing. But that was part of the fun. But what has changed today now, I think, also is that traveling has become so much more common. And everyone is traveling now, also to faraway places, to Tulum, to Ubud, and which was back then still something special. Now everyone can and is doing that. And what we felt 3 years ago, that when we were traveling around and we were traveling with our suitcases, we felt another thing has changed. The digitization was there. Yeah? Everything was digitized. The rest of our life was digitized. We were constantly connected, if we wanted or not, with each other, with our things. And the one thing that you were carrying with you all the time was the most analog piece of product that you could imagine. And we felt, well, let's think about how we can make that better, how we can bring that closer to the next generation of travelers, the digital age. And came up with a couple of innovations like integrating a charger, optional GPS. Now we're launching together with quintessentially integrated travel assistant service, Horizn Go. So we try
what does that do?
That actually gives you a membership to Horizn Go, which is a 24/7 Horizn travel assistant service. Worldwide.
So if I need to book a restaurant,
it books your travels. It gives you recommendations. Obviously, it helps you when you're on the road. It changes your travel when you're in a meeting and you're missing your flight. You're the first time in your life in Hong Kong and need a cool restaurant for tonight or so. Then it books you the table. Things like that.
It. This one sounds good because sometimes when they're like, "Oh, it can charge," I'm sort of like, how often do you need to charge? But I love this. No,
that's great. It's a good point. I think it's really interesting about all these different features. So some people who, especially ones who have lost a piece of luggage in the past, they all love the GPS service because they say that's life saving. But 80% of our customers don't care. Because most of them haven't lost the luggage yet, or don't relate to that situation. So that's fine.
Amazing. So that's no matter where you are, it will be able to say, "Hey, your luggage is in the middle of Bali still, and you're in London."
Exactly. And then we're about to connect with the airlines and the airports, and then you can just through the app have it sent to your hotel and or at home. You don't have to queue in line. Usually you queue forever. Then they don't know where it is. So you can actually do that. So it empowers yourself. Some people love the charger, and some people don't. So we make it all kind of modular. And overall, it's about, I think, developing ideas, innovation that drive the industry forward, and that's part of the fun. Yeah.
I'm sold. So for young travelers, fly and flop package holidays are a thing of the past. So we're talking about people want to return from a trip having learned a new skill or become fitter or have had some kind of unforgettable experience, or many people in our office are suddenly going on silent retreats, I think, after spending weeks on end with me. So I guess, Kate, what's driving this? What do you see in this trend?
I think we're all just so massively overscheduled at the moment, and we've all got such busy lives that I think there are a number of things going on. First of all, I think I discovered probably about 7 years ago, I did a piece when I was at Condé Nast Traveller in New York. It was a sporty Caribbean piece. I couldn't quite believe that my editor went for it, because it literally was like, really? You're actually going to send me to St. Lucia, Barbados and Jamaica to do sporty stuff? But what it was just a different take on the Caribbean, which is obviously an immensely important destination for New Yorkers. But what I discovered then, and I think also I've discovered skiing, is I'm not an immensely sporty person, but when I'm on holiday, I do think about work quite a lot. If I'm on the beach and reading a book. But if you're doing sport, if you're surfing off the coast of Barbados, or if you're skiing in the Rockies or whatever, you are just thinking about that because it's self-preservation. So I actually think that activity stuff is an incredibly good way of relaxing. So I think that's one aspect.
It's more like fly and disconnect rather than fly and flop.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Again, the internet has made these things available because, discovery is so much easier now. I also think that, there's a huge rejection of stuff that's been going on for several years. I think probably since the crash in 2007, 2008, when lots of people lost lots of stuff, and we no longer associate status with possessions as much. I think status has become a lot more about social media, so literally status updates. And I think if you're surfing somewhere cool or meditating somewhere cool or whatever, that probably makes for a better Instagram than, lying on a beach. Yeah. I don't know. So, yeah.
And Tristan, I wonder about that with what you guys are seeing at Vice, because you're sort of like the Amuse, you guys are the magazine of that sort of very new generation.
Yeah, and interestingly, so my background was in adventure sports. I started off on a print magazine, actually, that's how old I am, that was all about snowboarding. So it was sort of everything to do with that and the travel aspect and everything. So that adventure experience, we have always sort of been covering it and that kind of thing. What I've noticed more recently is that lots of more mainstream travel publications started stepping on the territory of the magazines where I used to work. So you had it was only hardcore surf magazines that would tell you the best surf spots in Indonesia or in Bali or whatever it is. And now actually you could read that in a whole range of different publications. You get the Guardian travel section will be telling you the best surf camps or yoga camps or whatever.
It's partly an evolution of the travel press in a way, because there's only so much you can write about.
Well, there's that,
and hotels and
so you need a sort of a new angle.
And also, I guess, when you used to write stuff, what would happen is, because it wasn't basically archived online where anyone can Google it, you could then say it again 6 months later or a year later, and you go, oh, this is useful.
When you're a freelancer, that was great, because you could basically tell the same story to 5 different people and they'd never know.
Not anymore.
It doesn't work anymore.
And Serena, what do you think's driving it?
I was just about to say also about travel patterns. Obviously, we can see what people are reading in terms of content and things. We can see that our readers go on about 6 to 10 city breaks a year, so quite a lot for these short weekend trips, where they kind of get away from their daily life for a bit, learn a bit, experience a bit of culture. But then they do often have this 1 or 2 week longer holiday. And as much as we'd like to think that they want this really experiential, transformational holiday, a lot of people still do want to go and just sit on a beach. It could be a beach in Sri Lanka rather than south of France now. But you have to also, I feel a lot of responsibility as travel media when these people don't have, I guess you guys don't have that much holiday. We get to travel so much. So we really have to get it right.
People are suddenly like, oh, we're liking you a little bit less. Like, we were liking you, and now we're like,
There is definitely the thing that package holidays aren't totally dead. They're just being repackaged. So actually, ABTA stats, so the Association of British Travel Agents, reckon that package holiday bookings went up by 8% last year. But at the same time, Thomas Cook canned Club 1830, which I'm sure you all have heard of. There's that program Club Reps on TV a few years back with Falaraki and God knows whatever else happened on that. So they've canned that, probably for the best. But they've replaced it with something they're calling Cook's Club, I think. And it's interesting, if you look at the marketing of all of that, it's very much kind of Instagram experience. So it's a package holiday, but they're promising the sunset shot and that you can learn to cook while you're there and you can do some surfing while you're there, rather than what they were promising with essentially the same product a few years back, which was fish bowls full of horrible luminous liquid and, whatever else happened on Club Reps.
I think it's package holidays. I agree that they're not going completely out the window because at the end of the day, people need to be able to afford to travel still. But it's about being able to personalize their trips. And I guess
So it's sort of repackaging.
Repackaging the package holidays, yeah.
There we go.
And I guess my sort of last question on this is, do we think that this is a passing fad or a sign of things to come? Because I think the point you made with the internet and with Instagram and people are no longer having to wear designer goods, so to speak. It's like, is that a trend because of the sort of micro stuff that you were saying about with like the economy? Or is it now that because people are on Instagram, ultimately that Gucci watch that someone wore or t-shirt used to say to them they had a certain lifestyle, but now someone can actually view the lifestyle?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and I think there's definitely a trickle-down effect. I also don't think that it's just millennials that are into sort of experiential travel. I think boomers are very into it as well. Generation X's. I think it's a big trend. But I also agree with Serena that there will always be a place for the beach holiday and the sort of simpler.
And Tristan,
right
just
about,
on that.
About the status purchase going out the window for, what did you say? You said the status purchase is gone, it's now about the status update.
Yeah.
Which, I really like that. That's pretty much spot on, I think.
And Tristan, just with that, you said you've got a bit of an older crowd as well than like the typical millennial. I guess what I'm wondering there is when we think about the last point you just made with like millennials and wanting experiences, my parents, let's say, would never have gone to certain parts of town, and I'll take them to like a cool, amazing restaurant and they'll love it. And it suddenly gives them that confidence to go to the type of places they never would have previously gone to. So are you seeing that really?
I guess so. My parents are fairly adventurous. They just spent 3 months in Myanmar, so possibly that's kind of ruling them out. But yeah, I think it's across the board. I mean, our audience is very much millennials. They're just what we'd call older millennials. So kind of, I think you can be 38 these days and still technically be a millennial.
Millennial mindset.
That's it. And it's the millennial mindset, but like you said, the millennial mindset is spreading outside of that demographic group and upwards as well as kind of downwards. So yeah, so you have older people adopting those concerns.
Yeah, one thing I'd also add about the future of travel is that younger generations as well as older generations are more self-aware than ever, I feel, and more emotionally connected to what they want on their travels. So if they want to feel refreshed, they might not need to go to a beach. They might say, actually, I prefer to go to mountains. Like, people are starting to have more individual taste and know what they want. And then also the emotional aspect, they want something a bit deeper, a bit transformational.
And I guess it's easier to find stuff to cater to individual tastes as well. Because
so they're not going to want to go back to just going to Paris up the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So tying this together, you guys are talking about experience, talking about how millennials are driving that, talking about that, how that's changing their buying habits. So in this age of experience, a new sort of quote we looked at recently, a bit of data says 78% of millennials want to spend their money on experiences over products, as we've all been discussing. And I guess what I'm wondering, a lot of people in the audience are retailers, they've got fashion brands or restaurants or cafes that they're opening up. What does that do to brands and retailers and companies? What does that fact do? So I guess looking at you, Stephen, how can a luggage brand ultimately create better experiences? You're launching this shop in August. How do you make it an experience for these millennials?
Right. I totally agree. I think it's quite obvious that millennials and the next generation is valuing more experiences and focuses a lot on, immaterial things like self-optimization when they travel and there's no question. But we're on the other hand, I think, clearly far away from a non-materialistic society. So I think people still value things, value design, value beautiful things. I mean, the consumer and the younger consumer even more so, I think, is more mature when it comes to brands nowadays. So they're more they expect more from brands and products about the story behind the narrative, the context, the storytelling, the experience around it. They want purpose in a way, or some kind of idea which. Because they can be, there's more choice now and more more power with the consumers. So that's what they are. So that puts them in a powerful position that they can actually be more demanding, and in the end, eventually, that drives each industry forward. I think to deliver better designed products, maybe higher quality products at a better price. And as long as, and in the past, that pressure wasn't so high, I think.
And how's it driving you guys to create your experiences for Horizn going forward?
I think it's on every level, on many levels. Yeah, it starts with the product and the development of the product, where we always think about, okay, how can we do that better? And because we are the younger, we are the challenger in the market, so we kind of have to be better. We don't have the big budgets as our competition that has been around for 100 years. So we need to be smarter, faster, and just more ambitious in everything that we develop and design. Also, we of course try to understand harder our specific target audience, the new generation. By partially I'm on the older edge of that millennial target audience, but we live with the audience and create an experience.
But what I'm trying to understand, Stephen, is tangibly when you guys are launching that store, I guess what are the questions you're sort of talking through the theory and the questions you're asking yourself, which I completely agree with, really interesting. How does that convey itself into the practicality of that physical experience?
Well, the physical experience in our store in Berlin, I think you can describe as it's probably it feels, hopefully, I would say, more like a nice, nicely designed hangout place. You see, we have big screens that show you, travel spaces. We have music playlists from, when we launch a new range of products like accessories or so. Then we get inspired by our own travels, like our latest Kyoto edition or Guen edition, and obviously the whole experience of the store then is around Guen, that part in Kyoto, and we tell the story behind that. We speak with people there, and we tell stories around Kyoto, and up to, as I said, even the playlist is from there. Yeah.
Okay, so Serena, you travel a lot, as you put forward, and you guys get to travel a lot as well. I guess what cities do you think, for this new age where people are craving the unique, craving the authentic, which cities do you think do it best? And what I'm more interested in now is like the content, i.e. the retailers, the restaurants, the little independent shops, the things other than just the beautiful beaches and scenery that people are going for.
Well, in Europe, people are going crazy for Copenhagen. It's not a new city, but I think they do retail and fashion particularly so well. I think the young Danes just represent the brands perfectly, and they're going around wearing the clothes, looking great. I think abroad, everyone's still crazy for Japan. Not just the main city, Tokyo anymore, but going further afield to Osaka, to Kyoto, to lots of different places. And I need to have a think about some other destinations. So.
Kate, what about you?
So you mean cities that have
could
that
be
kind
anything.
of
I think
lifestyle to wrap?
Just when we think about retail, restaurants, the sort of things within these cities, who do you think's doing it best?
I mean, I think that cities that do the sort of blended retail experience well are, so, I don't know, a great gallery with an amazing shop and an amazing restaurant. It's hard to find anywhere better than New York. They've had I remember when the Ace Hotel opened in New York with opening ceremony, which is obviously a fantastic fashion brand. And I think that's a really great, that's something that retailers can really excel at, is aligning themselves, as obviously Stefan is aligning himself to travel. You're kind of a travel brand more than a suitcase brand, aren't you? And some of your competitors, like Away, are doing exactly the same thing, and that they've got, their websites are full of travel content. They do a travel magazine as well. And hotels and galleries and places like that are great things for brands to align themselves with.
And Tristan?
Well, I was just going to pick up on something you said there, which was about, and your original question to Stefan, which is about how do you, as a brand who sells a physical product, align yourself with this millennial sensibility that's not about buying physical products, it's about buying experiences. And I think the way you do it is as Stefan said, you basically tie in your product with a story. You make sure that your brand story is really sort of strong, and you sell kind of the experience of that product as well. So, I don't know, in the adventure space, for example, the North Face, wherever they have a flagship store, they'll have like trail running meetups. So they do it in London even, they'll put on a bus that takes a whole load of people out every weekend to do a kind of 20-mile trail run in the Sussex Downs. And they do that all for free, and you don't have to be a North Face customer, you just have to go to the shop and sign up. And the idea is they're kind of making this experience a bit of a North Face thing. So they're aligning themselves with that experience and then hopefully persuading people who are into experiences to do that.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask you some quick questions. I want like one-line answers on this, so just one word. And Stefan, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us one of your favourite shops abroad? What do you think? And you guys got a bit of time to think. Okay. So favourite shop abroad and what made it stand out?
Abroad. One sentence.
Yeah. What word?
One word. I like the Rafa stores.
Rafa, okay.
Yeah.
And what made them stand out to you?
I was going to say that.
I'm so sorry. No, I think that they're done really well in terms of authentic experience. You can feel the bicycling passion of the makers behind, and the combination with the Barnes coffee shop concept. I think it's really smart. You feel there's a strong community approach behind, and lots of people like to hang out. I think it's important to have a store that also feels feels lively, and it always feels lively. It's never empty.
They like these community hubs, aren't they? Driven by the community. Serena, what about you? What's your favourite store from abroad? Undiscovered gem.
Undiscovered gem. I think come back to me.
Okay. Kate.
Oh God, that's really really.
One person has a pass, no one else is allowed it.
I'll give you a couple.
Okay.
In Stockholm, Sphinx 10, which has been there for generations, but it really sort of exemplifies Swedish design for me. It's an amazing design store of sort of mid-century modern furniture and fabric and stuff like that. There are a few places in Porto that I love that are, again, are sort of very authentic local design, but also a really great experience as well because they feel... they're light and airy and the products are well displayed and you get a sense of the country and the city from just walking in there.
And Tristan?
I'm a huge... Well, I was going to say Rafa, but Stefan stole that answer already. But another brand that does that really well, that creates an atmosphere, is Patagonia. I'm a huge Patagonia fanboy. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to anyone. Their flagship store in Chamonix is brilliant. It's got sort of, everything you'd want from a Patagonia store. There's coffee facilities in there, and then they have meetups and they run climbing trips and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, Serena, back to you.
I could do restaurants, but I'm really bad with shops. I shop mainly online.
We'll give you a shop first, and we'll give you a little bit longer for one. We'll give you a restaurant first, sorry, and then we'll think of one more shop.
I think I love restaurants in cities where you go and you don't feel like you're a tourist, basically. When I was in Copenhagen, I really loved Manfreds. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's so nice. It's like all candlelit. Everything's sourced locally. And all the staff who are ex-Noma chefs, and they're just so passionate about the food and really knowledgeable, and that really comes across well.
And Kate, why don't you give us a restaurant?
Oh God, I'm just thinking about Copenhagen as well. There's so many fantastic places.
Why is Noma obviously an incredible thing? But going back to what you guys think, can you sort of personify for us why a brand like that and a restaurant experience like that has really taken off?
Do you know how long the waiting list is for Noma?
Go on, share with us.
40,000 people.
Wow.
So I think there's entrepreneurs sat in this room, they're thinking, some people here run phenomenally successful brands. You've got people in the audience from some of the best brands.
No, it's closed. He's closing it.
No, he's just reopened it.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same concept.
New concept, a new future experience, right? He doesn't he take a boat?
It's still called Noma.
Yeah, it's still called Noma, but it's a completely different concept.
Yeah, but it's still a restaurant. It's still a restaurant. Yes.
I think for Noma, it's all about René Redzepi, and it's just pure passion, and it's theatre as well. I mean, it's an experience. the only bad thing about my meal there was the natural wine, which was an extremely good-looking sommelier who my friend and I just sort of fell in love with. And if he told us that we should have Diet Coke with our meal, we would have had Diet Coke. But every plate is an absolute artwork, and it doesn't all taste. It's not all really kind of yummy and tasty, but it's just interesting and it's beautiful, and you can really feel the passion. And I think there are lots of restaurants in Copenhagen like that, actually.
Well, I also think what's interesting is the exclusivity, that they had one restaurant, they didn't look at adding more covers or opening up more like in different places. I know they've got some sub-brands, but also, to the gentleman's point, I love the idea that at its peak, they sort of go, and now we're shutting it.
Yeah,
and
then they moved it to
new
Tillum
experience. So you're like, oh my God, I want to experience that one as well, and I want to experience it before I miss out on this one, like I might have missed out on the last. Tristan, what are the up-and-coming cities that you think we should be looking at right now? If someone in this room wanted to do the next Noma or the next amazing, beautiful gallery meets coffee shop thing you spoke about in New York, which city should people be looking at?
And I mean, in terms of travel, cities that have a bit of a buzz around them this year, Tbilisi in Georgia has got okay.
So tell us about that place for the blank stares.
So I haven't been to Tbilisi since 2005, and I think it was very, very different back then. So Serena is probably best placed to.
No, I haven't been, but one of our editors went recently. Okay. Everyone keeps calling it the New Berlin. It's not the New Berlin yet.
No, I think that would be a bit bold.
But
in terms of this, apparently amazing nightlife. When I went, it was definitely just coming out of its kind of former Soviet stage, but they were doing things quite differently. They had a friendly police force, which back then was a total revelation in the kind of former Soviet sphere, and they were doing visa-free travel. There's now a few other countries in that part of the world that are doing that, including Kazakhstan, and this is maybe going a little bit further than kind of buzzy, but Almaty, I think, would be a great city to visit. And Kyrgyzstan as well as a sort of destination, which is just next door.
And Kate, up-and-coming places you'd be focusing on? The
city that I went to and loved most last year is a place called Matera, which is in Basilicata, just on the border with Puglia in Italy. It's only about an hour from Bari airport. And it's a cave city, so it's layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of caves that have been inhabited since prehistory until 1953, when it was a slum. Basically, there were families of 11 people living in caves with their livestock, and it was declared the shame of Italy, and the people were expelled to a new part of town, which was a bit of a disaster, actually. And just in the last sort of, I had this lovely guide who, when he was a teenager, he and his friends used to play in the caves. They literally had their own man caves with sort of sofas and stuff. And in the last sort of decade or so, they've been repopulated, and some have been turned into hotels, but in a pretty sort of sympathetic way. And it's an absolutely stunning, beautiful city. It's one of the European cities of culture next year. I went to a great sort of bar, restaurant, workspace called Area 8 there, which I really loved. And it's just fascinating. At one point, I think I was standing in a cemetery, it's a 9th century cemetery or something, on top of a cave which had been a church in the 12th century and had also been inhabited by a family in the 17th century or something. I mean, it's completely mad and utterly beautiful, and I would thoroughly recommend it.
Stefan, what would your place be?
I'm planning to go to Nicaragua, but I cannot say much about it yet.
And
so I'm probably going to look
place?
it up on Suitcase.
And what's your favourite one so far that you'd recommend? If you were opening up a Horizn store, not in London, not in Berlin, where would it be that would be the most unusual destination?
The most unusual destination?
Up-and-coming city.
That up-and-coming city. I think definitely we're looking at Japan. Not sure if that's unusual enough, but we're looking into Tokyo, and I think that's for me, it's a super exciting space. Always, it's always an amazing trip and an experience, and somehow the Japanese culture is always fascinating for me.
I think it's the second biggest retail city in the world right now. And Serena, what about you?
I'd say also Bergen in Norway. I don't know if any of you've been before, but it's this beautiful little town with like all these higgledy-piggledy houses. It's got some really cool shops, really great restaurants. and it's right by the fjords as well. So it's amazing to go in summer or winter.
So, trying to take this back to some sort of practical moments or advice if I was setting something up or looking at an experience. You've spoken about like millennials believe the key to leading fulfilling lives through meaningful, holistic experiences, and you've sort of, we've touched upon that, and I think it's officially nicknamed, here it says the transformation economy. So if a brand, a retailer, is looking at going to a new destination, tapping into this transformation economy, who's doing it well, and what would you do to tap into that? Does that question make sense? It's a lot. I'm throwing a lot at you, but Serena.
I'd say Nike are doing a really good job. Obviously, not exactly a small brand, but their Nike Plus app. Not that I've used it, but apparently it's really great that you can sign up. You can join running clubs, and I think that's a good example of a bigger message for a brand. Like obviously they're a sportswear brand, and they want people to get out there, play sport, but they've made their message bigger and made it a lot easier to be able to actually live that lifestyle in a more selfless, authentic. I say authentic, it's bandied around way too much.
But I guess what's interesting to me, Kate. I'm sorry, Stephen. Go on, add in.
No, I just wanted to say I really agree. You know, I think Nike did something. I sometimes refer, or very often actually refer to them and say, you know, ideally we build something like that. You know, I mean, not necessarily in this size, but I think a Nike of travel is fascinating. Also here to see how they have in the end, created a brand and an experience around a product like sneakers and running shoes. Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good example.
And I think why the question's interesting to me is that when you think about it, these sort of meaningful, holistic experiences is something that you're starting to see now. Hotels, especially independent hotels, and travel really nail. So, but people aren't staying in necessarily a Hilton anymore or places like that, but they're going to these amazing little boutiques, whether it's the Ace or whatever else. Yeah. They've tapped into these communities and built thoughtful, meaningful experiences.
Yeah. I think that's got a lot to do with Airbnb and Airbnb's impact on travel, which, and I think as a result, hotel brands are sort of, pricking up their ears and thinking, shit, it's had a big impact on the hotel industry inevitably. And I've been to quite a few hotels in the last year or so that are, if you saw them on Airbnb, in fact, I think one of them I went to in Menorca in Mahon, which is the capital, lovely little place called Casa Telmo. Which is literally made for Instagram. It's so beautiful, but really kind of quirky design. It was started by these two guys, I think in their early 20s, who are interior designers from Barcelona, and they bought this massive, 5-story townhouse for very little in Mahon, and they wanted to live there, but obviously they couldn't afford to live there on their own, so they've made it into this kind of guest house / B&B / hotel. So there are a few kind of hotels in this month's issue of Traveller. There are a couple in New York, Sister Hotel and Ian Schrager's new hotel, Public. I think that's Public. That one,
Public.
Which again, much lower price point, more basic, but because of this sort of experience thing that we're all talking about. I've been talking for probably 10 years about how luxury is no longer about gold taps and all that sort of stuff. We've moved so far from that and it's good to see hotel brands kind of catching up.
Yeah, and I think the lines are completely blurring. That when you're looking at the big luxury brands that are opening up hotels or restaurants, it's like, what is retail anymore if retail is becoming experience? What is travel anymore if people are buying experiences rather than products, and it all sort of blends into one?
I think Soho House, which is where I used to work, is a good example of that. And that has evolved massively as a brand from somewhere that people went at 2 o'clock in the morning in Soho to catch up with their mates and have a few late night drinks, to a real kind of working space during the day where everyone has a laptop, and then it becomes more of a kind of leisure
how people
spend.
Design their homes.
Right, to homes, and now they have their co-working space as well, and spas, and the gyms are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because millennials are going to the gym instead of going to the pub. So, yeah.
I think the key, one of the key words here is community. The brands are doing it really well. Also, hotel brands, when they bring the local community into their hotels. So I went to one called Hotel Sanders in Copenhagen recently, and it's just awesome because all these really cool young people in the bar with you. and you're making friends, and you just really feel like you're having a great experience. It's the same with Nike. That's how they started, by just accessing the running community, and then now they've built little pockets of community that will become fans of their brand and advocate it naturally.
Another thing that the hotel industry has done well as fostering those communities, is nailing service, like hospitality and travel. At each touch point, they've sort of, sometimes now they're slipping, but whether it's airlines, but most touch points have always been about creating these amazing services. Again, what do you think brands can learn from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two things happening, really. I think that service is becoming ever more important. I completely agree with that. But the kind of unhotel, where I was in Formentera a couple of weeks ago at basically an apartment hotel, which is perfect for. I went with my family, and I've got 2 little kids. So, we wanted somewhere that there was kind of hotel facilities when we wanted to, book a babysitter or whatever, but that had a kitchen, and we could make our own pasta, whatever. So I think that, again, the impact of Airbnb means that service is, you kind of want it when you want it. It's a turn on and offable in a way. But at the same time, the grand hotels and luxury hotels will never cease to exist, I think. I almost think that the middle ground is perhaps sort of slipping away slightly. I don't know if you agree, Serena.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more hotels which are going into one of the space of not having someone to greet you when you come in. You do your own check-in. So unnecessary bits of service they think are unnecessary. Also room service, a lot of hotels. I think that's sad. I miss the room service.
But that's just not, it's not just a cost-saving thing, is it? It's basically because as a generation, or not across generations, we're just getting more used to getting what we want at the touch of a button, and actually we're kind of comfortable with that, and we don't necessarily want someone hovering there just waiting to take our order. Yeah. So it's not just like cutting corners, or at least that's what I've seen.
But at the same time, I think it's funny to me that sometimes you've seen the hotel industries take it too far. Like, the phenomenally successful Me Hotel. I remember a friend of mine was staying in one recently, and she said, "Oh my God, I'm sick of this millennial shit." She goes, "I've got like a blue mood light, but I can't order room service." And I guess it's like, how do you sometimes take it too far? So I guess one final question for me before we start to move into the audience is, 3 of you are journalists. If we've got a brand, we're taking it out there. I guess, how do you get in touch with you guys to make someone like you that's in travel write about an experience that you're creating? How many things do you see? What sort of gets chucked in the bin and goes off your desk versus what's the things that you look at and go, this is worth writing about? Kate, to you first.
That's a tricky one.
When do you get excited? When you get sent an inbox from a PR?
I guess something, we're always looking for the next place, or the place next to the next place, or I don't think that will change. But I suppose I'm less interested in hotels than I am in places. So if it's somewhere like Matera, or I went to Holbox, which is an island north of Cancun a couple of years ago, that Tulum has been talked about and written about sort of ad nauseum, and has changed a lot in the last 20 years. And I wanted to go there, and everywhere was just so unbelievably expensive. It seemed to be like $500 a night for a sort of beach hut, the kind of beach hut that I'd stayed in 15 years before, with a hammock, but with Wi-Fi this time. So I sort of looked a bit further and saw Holbox, and then remembered a friend had gone there, and that was exciting because. Because it was just slightly off the beaten track, I suppose. Places that are unfamiliar, I suppose. But places that will give me, keep going back to this very silly, authentic experience thing. But, I want to be somewhere where I feel I'm in Mexico, not that I could be anywhere in the world. I want to feel I'm in Italy, not I could be anywhere in Europe.
Another question is, should brands even care about travel magazines or any magazine? Because a lot of these guys now are talking to influencers, so to speak. What do you think the role of the influencer has played on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, we were just talking about this.
We were just talking about this. Yeah, I suppose I started up by saying that Instagram has revolutionized the travel industry. It has, definitely. I think there's a point where we reach kind of peak influencer and influencer saturation. I don't know if we're at that point yet, but it's such a cliche these days. There's the sort of visual cliches of the sunset shot or the sort of looking away from camera shot or whatever. I don't know if anyone's seen, Barbie actually has an Instagram influencer account with 2 million followers, and it's literally Barbie dolls posed in real world locations doing all the influencer cliches. They're not taking a piss, there's real brands tagged in there, and they actually make real money out of it. But the fact that you can have what's quite a sort of sexist 1950s doll basically doing this influencer thing tells me a little bit that maybe we've reached kind of peak saturation point. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I guess influencers are still relevant at the moment, and a lot of people set aside marketing budget for them. But
and Stefan, just quickly to interject from your side, people are spending, like every influencer that asks for freebies and stuff like that. As a brand, how do you manage that, and do you see the return in value?
Is a very good question, and I would lie if I knew the answer completely to that. I can say that we obviously keep a really good relationship with our influencer community. It's quite big. We do invest a significant amount of money in that. We think it is important. It has an important influence on our target audience. They get. It's a good mix, but that's also we're also selective in a way. So you have to, of course, not only come with reach but also with quality. So you have to have a certain level of engagement. You have a certain a certain level of quality in your messaging somehow. And then we are generous with that.
And what about the difference between the influencer stuff versus the collaborations? Is it another form of influencer marketing, but with a brand rather than a human?
Yeah. I think that's pretty similar. In our marketing department, the same people do both. Yeah, so they take care of brand collaborations and influencer collaborations. That's definitely something for us as a brand. We're right now working, I think, on 3 different collabs with influencers, like co-designs, drops, and 2 with other brands. And I think it's something that you consider. That's part of the game today. Yeah. I think. Yeah.
And also collaborations with brands like Condé Nast Traveler and Suitcase, and Travelers. Obviously, digital numbers have just gone like that, and Instagram as well. And I think it's got 1.5 million social media followers. And we are looking a lot at collaborations with luxury brands who want to be in our space. I think that's a great opportunity to make great content that, in some subtle way, features the brand.
And Serena, what's your thought?
I was going to say, actually, that I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Horizn and Suitcase are launching a travel club soon, which is a kind of hybrid between media influencers and the travel brand. So we're just going to send really cool people on awesome trips. So we'll be producing content like in a 360 fashion.
So I'm sure people are thinking, how do I become one of these really cool people that you send on awesome trips?
But the way that, I think I was teasing Stefan for being so picky about who we choose to send on these trips, but I think that's right. That you need to choose people that your customer will actually relate to, rather than the person that has 2 million followers.
I think it is, and I think what I was saying about peak influencer is people might be getting sick of the cliches, but there are still people and brands and media brands, obviously, that are doing it really well. So it's just about making sure you have the right people and collaborate with the right people.
I met a brand recently, and they said our influencer strategy now is the hidden influencer. So it was the person who has like a private account that's got influencers following them, so that they can influence the influencers to influence.
It's getting well better.
I was like, I can't compute it all. Okay, final question from me before we open it up to the audience. My massive pet hate is retail in transport hubs, especially airports. Hate it. There's never anything good that you can buy. What is the worst experience of retail you have seen in either a train station or an airport on your travels?
I hate the one at Stansted Airport. You have this amazing, like Norman Foster designed building.
Most of it. I said I hate all of Stamford.
Stansted.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
I was at West Stamford Airport.
Yeah, I'm jet lagged. Anyway, let's carry on.
So yeah, you have this amazing Norman Foster designed building, and they've basically just filled it with one narrow tunnel that you have to walk down. So you kind of wind through everything, and it makes me not want to buy anything. Basically, it puts me right off. But I mean, it must work. There must be some research behind that suggests that it works, just not necessarily on me.
Yeah, it's really hard to think of good examples, of positive examples. So many transport hubs are just appalling. I think aesthetically, I love the Oculus in New York, that new amazing train station, which I could just spend all day in, but that's got nothing to do with retail. It's just architecture.
Well, it has got retail. It's all retail.
I haven't
It's a Westfield Mall.
Just looking
Westfield
up.
only.
Oh, yeah. All right. I think Terminal 5 is okay. It's better than most, but you know, predictable. It needs some appear here kind of pop-ups. You know, I think
does.
You know, varying the offering.
Terminal 5 just at the camera.
Varying the offering. You know, not just really high-end luxury brands. I'm sure that retail space is just enormously expensive, but yeah.
Yeah, I find most American airports pretty shocking.
JFK is the worst.
Oh my god. I think a really good example recently that I've been to is Amsterdam Airport, Schiphol. That I went for business to Amsterdam. I didn't have time to go to the Rijksmuseum, and they had a mini Rijksmuseum in the airport. I think it's quite cool when airports have bits of the culture from the city. So if you didn't have time to do something, you can go experience it there.
That's cool.
That's a good example. I think we have a couple of really shitty airports in Berlin too, and we're still having a hard time coming up with a new one. So retail is also really bad over there. I think you have a point. I think the retail experience in any not only airports but also stations is really bad. I mean, I heard about St. Pancras. Apparently, it's not so bad. So I can't really tell because
Beautiful.
I was just told today. But
I do think it's
a lot to
interesting
disrupt.
just what value could be bought, because it's like, let's say a luggage store. I sort of imagine that if you're traveling, you get to an airport, let's say you don't have membership to a lounge or whatever it is, you're not in there, and suddenly there's this luggage brand, like let's say someone, beautiful brand like Rimowa, and then you just have a shop that sells your luggage. It's like, imagine if anyone with your suitcase could suddenly go in there and chill and have free Wi-Fi and have cocktails made for them. I'd suddenly be like, okay, I'll pay the extra however much for the suitcase. It's interesting that no one's yet doing anything in those spaces other than pure play retail.
I think that's some of the thoughts we are having when we're thinking about stores, and we should probably collaborate. I think that probably is a good idea.
We all want in now.
Yeah.
So very quickly, opening up to the audience. Do we have any questions for our amazing panelists? Yeah, go ahead.
I am the founder of a company that spent 2 years coming up with a premium supplement range for jet lag, which I need to give you some.
Amazing. I need it.
With aviation experts and nutritionists, and I absolutely need a top-up at Heathrow, for sure, and I can't find one, and I'll be here, so we need to talk about that. But one thing I'm amazed that nobody's mentioned, and you did a little bit about sport, was the entire wellness travel industry, and the explosion and the launch of spin and yoga studios in Heathrow, and the entire in-flight wellness, and wanting to stay healthy while you're travelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely there, but I don't think it's made enough of an impact yet. I don't know whether people agree. And I think it will, absolutely. And, meditation, all that sort of stuff with fear, with flying phobia and stuff. But I think it's sort of nascent.
Yeah,
Serena,
so adventure travel's probably the biggest trend. At 27% of all travel now is adventure trips. Then food and wellness kind of both growing a lot, but it's surprisingly still smaller than you think. I think an interesting example recently is Equinox, the gyms branching into hotels. We haven't seen them yet, but I think...
Yeah. Sorry, I meant specifically at airports. I don't think it's made an impact, but yeah.
No, in general, travel, I think, would be interesting. Because also, talking about older generations, a friend of mine's mum just went to somewhere in France and she took a week off and had cookery classes all week. And then I think it's interesting. I know that isn't fully wellness. That's cooking, not. But I think it's interesting that people are doing more of these trips.
But you mentioned at the start that several of your colleagues have been on silent meditation retreats. I mean, that essentially is wellness, isn't it? And yoga's obviously massive everywhere.
Yeah.
And yoga camps. I mean, yoga travel is definitely a thing that friends of mine have done. not me.
And another question's come through on Twitter from Jenny, who says, why does experiential travel seem to be more popular with women? So maybe head to you, Katie, and then you, Stefan. Go on, jump in.
Maybe what?
I was gonna say,
why is it more popular with women?
Or do you think, or do you disagree?
I'm not sure I necessarily agree. I don't know. What?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But who's your mystery Twitter?
I don't know.
tweeters?
Have you
Has
got
not
any
got
stats on
any stats
this?
to back this up?
Go on.
I'm from Flashbacks, so we are an adventure travel company. We specialise in adventure travels, group trips for solo travellers in their 30s and 40s, so very aligned with all sort of age group. And we just find that there's much more of a skew towards women booking on our trips. I just wondered if you had any sort of views on that, whether it's the experiential element or the sort of group travel.
It might also be your platform, because I think over 60% of travel is booked by women. And it might be how they're finding you as well. And men might be booking in a different way. It's still experiential travel.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
My question is about experience fraud. So big data is revealing some quite interesting things. Not unexpectedly, millennials are more likely to perpetrate experience fraud. And this is kind of quite provable, i.e. people writing about amazing experiences at places they've never been. But they're also more likely to consume them and seem to have a kind of complete naivety about experience fraud. So I'm just wondering, for me...
I'd never heard of experience fraud before. What is it?
So, is this the Anna Delvey sort of stuff?
They're kind of fake, the fantasy that you have been...
Oh, is this the girl in New York that was living the fake world?
I mean,
well, she was still getting the experience.
Right.
I mean, she was just not with
one
her credit
interesting
card.
example, I don't know if you've... bigging up my own company here, but some of my colleagues on Vice.com made a shed in Dulwich, the #1 rated restaurant on TripAdvisor in London, and it went ridiculously viral. And that, I guess, is the sort of thing you're talking about?
I think that's about the commercial thing, which is if you look at certain apps using big data, cross-referencing with things like Flickr and so on, you get on UGC travellers writing about having an absolutely great time here, blah, 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 and for no apparent commercial gain. We're not talking about people with big followings. We're talking about people fantasizing that they have been somewhere where the cool people have been where they've never been. But what is interesting is millennials are also more likely to consume and book at the couch in Dulwich.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I couldn't tell you who the demographics are. I think they all had their faces blurred out when they made the video. But I mean, just sort of spitballing here, but I would imagine that's because this is a generation that values experience and puts status by the sort of experience, and so therefore,
like people
you're kind of
buy
bigging
a fake
yourself
Gucci
up.
bag.
Yeah,
in
in a previous generation, someone would have bought a fake Rolex.
And I think everyone, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people do that to some extent on Instagram as a kind of better version of your life, isn't it?
It's gone from product fraud to experience fraud.
Right.
So, in the 80s, people used to pretend that they were wearing Vivienne Westwood jeans, but they weren't. I mean, that's nothing new.
Yeah.
I'm just intrigued as to why millennials, who are technically more digitally savvy than baby boomers or Gen Xers,
are as gullible.
Falling
I think
for
they
it.
are getting savvier, though. There was that huge uproar against influencers, specifically a couple of beauty influencers who'd photoshopped some skylines, and it was their followers that had called them out. So I think people are quite gullible to influencers still on the posts and these really photoshopped images, and they're not thinking about how long it actually took to take that photo. But now brands are also having to call out if they do Photoshop an experience or a photo of somewhere. And I think it'll probably be the same for influencers. And then people, since there was that huge uproar about that skyline in particular from a specific beauty blogger, people are starting to look out for it more and recognize it. So I think there will be a lot less of this fraud because people will be calling it out, basically.
There are some accounts that are having a bit of fun with it as well. They're like, one of my favourite Instagram accounts is You Did Not Sleep There, which is these kind of, fantastical pictures of someone with legs dangling off this cliff and a tent behind them and whatever. Yeah, he didn't sleep there.
And we've got time for probably 2 or 3 more questions. Any more from the audience? Yes.
So if you're going to different city and you find a different store, like food bag, what's the element that makes you buy them, even if it's more expensive? It's something that it's like I want to buy it, even if it's like more expensive, but it's made in the city.
Well, there was something I read recently that said that people today are buying because they want a souvenir of the experience.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is the random things that I've got in my wardrobe that aren't sort of like black, navy, or white are things that I've been traveling. I've gone, oh, you know, that suits this person that I think I want to be while I'm on holiday. And it probably reminds me of that trip. I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, I bought a terrible suit in Vietnam at one stage, basically made by, for exactly that reason. It was like, oh, well, this will be funny. And I've worn it once, I think.
I don't buy a lot of fashion when I travel, but I definitely like some, souvenirs. You know, people have always bought souvenirs, whether it's a, art print or a plate or something that, you open the cupboard and you think, oh, I remember that trip to Formentera or whatever, and yeah.
But it goes back, I think, as well to that kudos of discovery, that if you walk in someone's house and they're like, oh, I bought all of this on IKEA or whatever the direct-to-consumer equivalent is, it's a bit different. Someone goes, oh my God, I found these chairs in an antique market in Paris, and this little lamp was from wherever in Copenhagen. You suddenly go, you feel like it's all more precious.
Bragging thing, isn't it?
I think it needs to remind you of the place. Also, I also often consider if it will actually fit in my suitcase.
Yes.
Whether I'll bring it home or
Someone
not.
needs to do amazing couriering for when you're on travel. Any other questions? Right at the back, is there anyone? Got such a full room. Okay, so final question from me. Well, actually, let's go two final questions. But I think one that I just want to touch upon is you guys are traveling the world. You're going everywhere. And right now, in the media, when we think about the city that we're in right now, London, Brexit's happening. There's lots of sort of doom and gloom. There's not particularly an exciting vision being portrayed for what the future's going to look like. I guess, where does London sit in this world stage? What does the future of London look like, both from a travel point of view, but also from someone who's inhabiting this city and thinking about where it stacks against all of these amazing cities that you guys are mentioning? Kate, what's the future of dear London?
I love London. I was born in London. I've been here most of my life. Brexit I find unbelievably depressing on about a million different levels. If I were a millennial, would I want to be staying in London for the next decade if Brexit does go ahead? I'm not sure. I'd probably be going to Berlin or Porto or.
That's interesting you say Berlin. I actually imagine that London is, because I think all the banks and big companies and corporates, if everything goes wrong, a lot of them will leave London, which will mean that it's a lot cheaper to actually live here. So I imagine it'll become a lot more creative. So a lot more startups will thrive here. It'll become a lot more similar to somewhere like Berlin. Cheaper to live.
But when you talk about travel, you're saying like places you're going, we've got some of the world's best train stations, we've got these amazing little streets and shops and activity. You're saying that will, like, if Brexit had happened and the city was how it was now, where would London stack up?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to stop being a global hub, put it that way. It's where it's located, just in terms of time zones between the US and Asia, makes it very useful. So I think people are always going to want to come here. There's a whole lot of history, so tourists are always going to want to come here. There's really cool experiences, that kind of thing. What impact Brexit will have on the commercial sector? You should probably have a panel of bankers here rather than some travel.
It's going to have a big impact on the hospitality sector, for example, isn't it?
In terms of
prices and staffing.
And
I think things like retail, the spaces might end up being cheaper, so that more young businesses can move in. It'll be like Barcelona after the crisis.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
But also, I guess a lot of the places you guys are mentioning, it's less about the economic future of it and just more about the future. And whether you think London is still, if you were setting up a business today, is it still the hub? Is it still a place that you think, regardless, is an optimistic future? Or are we thinking, actually, the media is right and it's a bit of a scary...
I'd say there's very few other places in the world like London. New York, possibly. Tokyo, maybe. Moscow, if you're Russian-speaking and want to hit that market. But, there's not a lot of other places like London.
Stefan?
No, I agree. I'm not from London, so I'm probably careful to judge, but I'm super optimistic. I think London, even though the Brexit, of course, made us all a little sad. I think what still always will combine us and it's like, you have communities like the creative community, the creative class, the creative industries, you know, they don't. I think they don't care, you know, about if the effort is a little bit bigger to move or the effort is a little bit bigger to travel. Or to trade goods. I think the creative community for us, which is our target audience here in London, is very like-minded still, and I'm pretty sure will be in the future.
Okay, so each of you, top 3 retail cities in the, not retail cities, cities. Top 3 cities in the world, each, and then we're going to finish up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Kate, you're first.
God. I lived in New York for almost 6 years, and I love it. I love the Nordic cities, particularly Stockholm and Copenhagen. God, where have I been recently? Australia. I haven't been to Sydney for a really, really long time, but I do love Sydney, and I maybe love Melbourne even more, actually.
Tristan?
So I'm going to talk about cities I enjoyed travelling to. Almaty, Kazakhstan, I said it before. City of 1.5 million people, ever more sophisticated, DJs flying in from Berlin to play on the weekend, and 4,000, 5,000 metre peaks visible out of the window of any hotel, with snow in the winter and incredible hiking in the summer. So yeah, that's going to be number 1. Moscow.
That was amazing. That was also like, it was like a...
It's like a sales pitch there.
An Instagram image. I pictured it all. I was there.
Moscow is still incredibly exciting, and still, even though it's becoming a little bit more civilized and a little bit more kind of westernized, it still has a bit of a Wild West feeling to it. Number 3, don't know. Yeah, move on.
Serena, your top 3.
I'd say Hong Kong, New York, and Copenhagen.
Stefan?
Tokyo, Cape Town, and London.
Amazing. So very quickly, I just want to finish off with something I watched on a documentary a while ago, and I wrote it down. And as you've all been speaking, I've managed to find it on my phone. And it was about an archaic institution. So it was about Claridge's. And obviously they're in travel, they're in the hotel industry. But I thought what they said sort of summarized what you guys had said today. So I'm going to read it out. And it says, this was the hotel manager speaking at the end of the documentary. And he said, Claridge's isn't just a hotel. And when I say just a hotel, I mean you go to reception, you go to your room, you go to sleep, and then you check out again. Dreams are being fulfilled in this hotel sometimes. And this is what that comes to, and this is where that comes to life. This hotel that means so much more than just sleeping. People always wanted to get together in a beautiful environment and connect and talk and live and create memories. People these days have everything. And every year you can buy more and more if you have the money to buy it. But what you really can't buy is memories and experiences. And that's why they come to hotels like this. I think people these days are curating their lives. They are collecting very selected elements, and that's why they want to experience, and that's what they want to take away, and that's how they choose their hotels and where they travel. Mm-hmm. And I think that whether that's hotels, whether that's retail, I think ultimately, going back to your Instagram comment earlier, which reminded me of that quote, is people are trying to curate their lives in those very select moments. And I think it sort of beautifully summarizes what everyone's been discussing tonight. So thank you so much for coming. Thanks for another underground session. Thank you to Not Just Another Store for hosting us. And thank you to the amazing team at Appear here for putting on these things for us every month. Thank you very much.